Hi everybody, it's Christina from Adventures in Polish Land, and today I have my September reading wrap-up to share with you. I do apologize if you can hear the television in the background. It's being used in other parts of this home, but I really wanted to film this wrap-up video as it is now October 1st. September was a really interesting month for me in terms of reading. For the first half of the month, I was reading an over 500-page Stephen King book, and then for the latter half of the month, I read a bunch of short books for Shorty September. So overall, I had a well-rounded reading month, read some really great things, some not so great things, but overall it was a really great experience. So let me jump right into the books. First up, we have that Stephen King novel I mentioned, which is Christine. I am reading all of Stephen King's books in publishing order, so this was the next one up on my list, and I loved this one. It is actually one of my favorite Stephen King books that I've read to date. This is about two teenage boys, Arnie and Dennis. They've been friends for as long as they can remember. And one day they are on their way home from their summer job, and in someone's yard is a car that's a hunk of junk, to put it nicely. But there is a for sale sign on it, and Arnie just becomes transfixed by this car. He has to have it. It causes a huge rift with his parents, but he still purchases the vehicle, and his life is forever changed because of that purchase. Now, this is not a spoiler. It says it on the back of the book in pretty big letters, as a matter of fact, but it turns out that the villain of our story is the car. Her name is Christine. She was previously owned by this really creepy guy named Roland LeBay, and the story chronicles Arnie's experience after he purchases this car and what happens to him and his community. So I found this book really entertaining. It did take me quite a while to read, but that's mainly because of its length. Otherwise, I was never bored. I found that this Stephen King book was different from some of his horror novels I've read previously. A lot of them deal with an adult and a child, or a lot of them deal with the people having special powers. This one, it was cool that what should be an inanimate object was our villain. So I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and it definitely has encouraged me to think about picking up another Stephen King book very soon. Then I moved into the shorties for Shorty September, so here's the first one. This is Nives by Sacha Naspini. It's translated from the Italian. This is about a 66-year-old Italian woman. Her name is Nives. On the very first page of the book, her husband goes out to feed the pigs on their farm, and he has a stroke and dies. And the pigs begin eating him before Nives intervenes. We then flash forward to shortly after his funeral. Nives has decided to remain in her home. She doesn't want to go live with her daughter in France, but soon she becomes quite lonely in the house because she's alone for the first time in 50 years, and she is having a hard time dealing with the grief. So what she decides to do is go to the hen house and bring in her favorite chicken. So instead of having a dog or a cat, she has a chicken for company. And that's going really well until one day her chicken gets hypnotized by a Tide commercial on the TV. And so it's really late at night, but Nives calls the local veterinarian for help. And the rest of the book is the phone call between herself and the veterinarian. And it starts out, as just a customer needing help from the vet. And it soon diverges into a whole series of very unexpected twists and turns that I absolutely loved. This book has very funny moments, and it also has very heartfelt moments because Nives is not only dealing with the grief of her husband, but you find out that she's dealing with the grief of the life that she wanted. And I think one of the morals of the story for this book is that even though we may not live the life that we have always desired in the back of our minds, we should be really grateful for the life that we have because it's still good. And I think that was a great story to have within this short little book. And I also had a lot of laughs while reading as well. I highly recommend this. I think it would make a great stage play, so I'd love to see that too. Maybe somebody can buy the rights from Europa and get that going because it would be so much fun to watch. I can picture it in my mind already. Next up, I read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This was one of those books I was supposed to read in high school, but I probably read a couple chapters and got bored. But that being said, I wanted to read the book after seeing the Broadway musical adaptation last November, and I finally found this at a used bookstore, and I was very surprised when I found out this was so short, and this is definitely the unabridged edition. So that's good because I could fit it into Shorty September, but unfortunately I did not love this book. This follows a young man named Nick Carraway. He has moved from the Midwest to Long Island to work as a bondsman, and he is renting a small house on Long Island Song. And next to him is this giant mansion. It's owned by this guy named Jay Gatsby. And Gatsby loves to throw these huge, lavish parties. It's the talk of the town. Now, across the sound from Nick is Daisy Buchanan. And Daisy is Nick's cousin. And she's also married to this uber-rich guy named Tom Buchanan. The story kind of revolves around this unique cast of characters. And unfortunately, they're all really unlikable people. I would say that Nick is the only morally good character in the bunch because you have Tom, who is abusive, he is racist, he is cheating on his wife openly. Then you have Jay Gatsby, who is a fraud and a criminal and a creepy stalker because let's not forget that the reason he purchased his house was to be across the street from his ex-girlfriend with the sole purpose of breaking up her marriage and stealing her for himself. And then you have Daisy, who you do feel bad for because she's trapped in a bad marriage. But honestly, she is a bit to blame as well because she also starts cheating on her husband. And I don't love that about her. So at the end of the day, while I can certainly appreciate F. Scott Fitzgerald and his very atmospheric, visually creating writing style, I did not enjoy this book. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars, and I would love to know your thoughts in the comments because I feel like this is a widely loved book, but it just doesn't work for me. And I understand that it's billed as a tragedy, and it is very sad, but it's just not fun to read, so let me know your thoughts. But then I read a book in one day that I absolutely loved, and it is Baba Dunja's Last Love by Alina Bronsky. This is translated from the German. This is about an elderly woman named Baba Dunja. She's from the Ukraine, and her home is within the death zone that should be uninhabitable by people because of the Chernobyl disaster. But because she is so old and her children are grown and living away from her, Baba Dunja decides that for the last years of her life, she wants to spend them at home in her house, which is within that death zone. So she moves back home. It causes a bit of a media uproar, so she's famous in her way. And slowly people have come to join her in her neighborhood. And some of them were her neighbors before, and some of them are other people who have just decided to live there. And they have a unique community. They take care of one another, but they also keep their distance. And Baba Dunja also takes us on her missions into the city to get supplies, which takes her hours of walking and then a very long bus ride, which, as you can imagine, is not easy for a woman of her age. As the book goes on, we learn more about her life and about her community. I just found her story so gripping. And I ended up Googling quite a bit about the Chernobyl disaster because I wasn't really familiar with it before reading this fiction novel. And I learned that there are people in real life similar to Baba Dunja who have returned to their homes despite it being illegal. And it made me think so much because I can't imagine being faced with this decision of losing your entire home and being forced to evacuate everything you ever knew. And then as you're nearing the end of your life, making that decision to go back, even though you'll be isolated and have basically just your home and your self-sufficiency to keep you going in your last days. It was really poignant. This book certainly has its comedic moments as well, but if you're looking for a novel that will teach you a lot about history, also give you some really interesting characters. I think this is such a really well done book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think I mentioned I read this in one day. I couldn't put it down, and it was a hidden gem for me throughout the month of September. Then we have Sandwich by Catherine Newman. I had heard about this book from Greg over at Supposedly Fun, and I ended up finding a copy of this book at my library's book sale for 50 cents, so I had to pick it up, especially since I think this qualifies for Shorty September. So this is about a family. You're spending a week with them. So every year for vacation, they go to Cape Cod. Sandwich is a town in Cape Cod. And you're following the 2 adult parents and their young adult children as they experience this week together in the beach house that they've rented every year for the last 20 years. And the book is interesting because our narrator is Rocky. She's the mom, she's in her 50s and going through menopause, and the first 20-25 pages of this book were hysterical. I was literally laughing out loud at her antics with her husband, and quickly things sort of shifted for me because Rocky is, in my opinion, a very insufferable character. I found her so annoying, and I was torn because I knew I was supposed to feel bad for her because you find out through the course of this novel some things that she went through in her life that are very challenging and difficult to deal with. So I wanted to empathize with her, but I just had a really difficult time doing that because she was so annoying. She is really mean to her husband, and I know she's going through menopause and I know that's affecting her moods, but he seems like a really nice and compassionate person going out of his way to be a good partner for her, and she's just horrible to him. She's also really inappropriate with her children. Like, she makes some comments that I'm like, oh my gosh, why are you saying this to your children? And I understand they're now young adults, but it still felt really icky. And she also has kept this huge secret from her husband, which you find out about as the book goes on. And you realize that she's lied to him for 2 decades of their marriage. And so it's really hard to empathize with her. I'm trying to say all of this without spoiling the book. But at the end of the day, I found this book really interesting. It deals with topics that are really prevalent in current political society, especially here in the United States. And so I was thinking about this book for a while after I read it because it's that weird instance where it was easy to read, easy to get through, but the topics within were quite challenging for me to digest because I don't think there's necessarily a right answer or a wrong answer in terms of Rocky, but it just gave me a lot to think about. So at the end of the day, I gave this 3.5 stars. There is a sequel coming out pretty soon, I think this month, and I would be interested in reading it, but I might give it a little bit of a break between books because this was just hard to digest at points. And then the last book I finished for Shorty September and for the month of September is A Long Way from Verona by Jane Gardam. I had read her Old Filth trilogy earlier this year and really enjoyed it, so I decided to pick this one up as well. This one is very different. It is about a young girl who is in the 6th grade. She's 12 and she's living in a remote village in England during the time where World War II is just getting started. And this is essentially a slice of life novel. I read the book thinking, what is going to happen? And overall, not much. You're just getting her life during this time period. And it is interesting at parts, but overall, this book was just kind of meh for me, which was sad because it opens with a really great paragraph where she tells you that when she was 9, she had this violent experience where this author that she met at school told her she was going to be a writer. And so the remainder of the book is her sharing her writing with you about her life. And you do learn some interesting things, especially about history, especially about the place where she's living. And she is an interesting character because she's not one of the popular girls. She's not well liked. She sort of is a victim of circumstance because she's often getting in trouble at school, even though she's not doing anything wrong. The teachers will think it's her and pick on her. So that was sad. But overall, this was just an okay book for me. I won't plan on rereading it, but I'm glad I tried out something by this author in addition to her other Old Filth books, and I would try more from her as well. This one was written in the 1970s, so maybe it's the time period and the character that wasn't as gripping to me. But I would say if you enjoy reading books about young characters who are experiencing historical events in their own way, this might be a good read for you. I will say I loved the beginning. I thought the end was really sweet as well, but the middle was a bit of a slog for me. I gave this 3 stars. And now I am currently reading, what is this even called? Will There Ever Be Another You by Patricia Lockwood, who's one of my favorite authors. I have about 20 pages left. I really thought I was going to get this finished during September, but it didn't happen. So I'll have my thoughts on that book for you in my October wrap-up. I hopefully will finish it this evening, but that is all I have to share with you. So I read 6 books during the month of September. I didn't get to color off any states on my USA map this month because the states that were represented in the US here in these books I already had. So we had Pennsylvania, New York, and Massachusetts. Already got those checked off. But I did read a book from the Ukraine. That is so cool. And I would love to know from you, do you tend to focus on books that are set in other countries than your own, or do you like to read about different parts of your own country? I see this video is now getting quite long because I didn't do a mid-month wrap-up in September, because if I did, it would have only been about this book. But I'm going to stop rambling now. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you in my next one. Bye.